My wife, 35F, and I, 35 male, have been married for 15 years and we've been together for 20 years. We have 2 kids, 12, 14. We absolutely adore and work tirelessly to provide the best possible life for them. For the past 3 years, things have been somewhat bumpy. I understand that our kids are at an age where they require a ton of our attention and resources with school, band, club sports, and other extracurriculars, and I'm aware of the physical and emotional toll that can have on marriages. However, for these past 3 years, my wife and I have had very little intimacy and very little sex, and we've been trying very hard to work on that aspect of our relationship. This past year has been the most difficult and by far the darkest year in our marriage. We didn't talk very much, we essentially became roommates co-parenting our kids under the same roof. It was very depressing and very demoralizing. It was to the point where we began contemplating divorce, and it became very dark and gloomy in the household because of that. We began seeking help with both individualized therapy and couples therapy, and it seems to have helped some. Little by little we started to get along and started to have deeper conversations about what our marriage looks like and what we would love for it to look like. This is where it gets tough. As time passed, my wife started to tell me she no longer was in love with me and that she only saw me as a best friend. That she only loved me in a very platonic way, and this was one of the main reasons she didn't have any desire for intimacy and let alone sex. This was very shocking to me, and quite frankly, I was devastated. I became angry and depressed, and I couldn't fathom the thought that I was no longer wanted or desired by the person I felt completely in love with. Things began to deteriorate again, and not long after, we were back to square one. I sat down with her one afternoon and had a heart-to-heart and began to ask questions about where the root of this problem lies, and her answer was, "I don't know, and that I have built up resentment towards you, but I don't know where it stems from." As you can imagine, this provides very little to no insight into how to approach this. I'm puzzled, I'm frustrated, and I do not know what to do at this point. Currently, we've arrived at a place where she says that she has no sex drive and no desire for intimacy or connection. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. I asked her what I could possibly do, or what is it about me that is so unattractive or undesirable, and her response is always, "I don't know." She stated that she does love me, but it's not the same. That she has been feeling disconnected for years and that our marriage just takes up too much work. Her focus is only the children for now, and that my co-parenting contributions are meaningful to her in our home. I'm at a loss, and I'm mainly venting about my frustration. It's tough to realize that the person you love has no feelings for you. I feel like at this point I'm only here to contribute financially and as a parent. I feel like what she means with companionship is that she's comfortable with the convenience of having a good father for our kids and my financial contribution to the household. In regard to intimacy and her sex, she basically told me that it's not something she's interested in or wants at this time. She mentioned that the only way to get to a point for any of that is to be intoxicated, which I believe is incredibly awful and very wrong. I told her I do not think forcing herself to have sex or be intimate by drinking or smoking is good, and I declined to be a part of that, which to my surprise, it upset her and made her more distant. We're both extremely honest and transparent. We've never cheated on each other, and we are always free to look through each other's phones, emails, socials, etc., and we hardly ever do. I asked her if there was someone else and she declined. Honestly, I believe her. We then peacefully went through each other's things, and as expected, it was clean. We've always been very forward, even with the hard topics, so I don't smell nor feel any foul play or infidelity. Am I wrong for declining to only be intimate or have sex when she's intoxicated? I'm firm on my stance of not partaking in this only when I'm high or drunk sex, because it doesn't sit well with me. I do not know how to help our situation, and I'm starting to become a bit anxious and desperate. We're both fairly young and healthy individuals and good looking. We both have good standing careers and are good parents. I'm just not sure how our lives could have driven us to this point. I'd love some outside perspective on this matter and some insight on how to address something like this. It feels so awful to be unwanted and undesired by my own spouse. I hate it. We did some swinging in the past. That was fun for some time. We mutually decided to stop doing it, and we have established it's not the case. When we were swinging, however, our marriage seemed to be in a good place. This is something we did disclose with our couple therapist and made sure to include it to make sure we're not neglecting an obvious potential issue. I will say, I did ask my wife if what she experienced during swinging is something that is affecting her view on our relationship, and she said it wasn't. Our swinging experience was always together, and it was very sex-driven. Nothing really emotional or poly. Truth is, I have to believe her at her word. I have no reason to distrust her. To date, she's always been very forward and never afraid of dealing things head on. No matter how painful. Swinging was her idea. Not mine. But I suppose I should have included it, but I honestly believe her on it not being an issue. I don't have any reason to distrust her. Maybe it's something she has to accept with her therapist or our couple's therapist. Can't really approach that with a solution if she doesn't think it was a problem. She says that all she wants is simply companionship, which basically means our co-parenting roommate dynamic. Update 1. I wanted to give you guys an update of how the therapy session with my wife went this week. Not sure if this is helpful or not, but I took many of the responses/comments/suggestions from my initial post and put together some things I wanted to discuss with our couples therapist to help us navigate some of the core issues that may be affecting this situation. One of the main things that is the buzzword of this has been the term resentment, and it has been really eating me up inside knowing my wife keeps telling me she doesn't know why she's resentful or doesn't know why this is affecting her emotionally/mentally. I brought this up with our therapist once again and resurfaced the conversation about being married for so long, 15 years, and being together since we are 14 years old. Our long history of growing up and how having children when she was 19 years old, me 20, significantly changed the trajectory of our lives. We experienced severe poverty and many hardships in the process, and we essentially had zero social life for the past 10 years because we were so busy raising babies, 2 kids now ages 12 and 14. She followed up with tons of questions directly mostly at my wife about her feelings towards this, and 90% of the responses were very our kids focused. It definitely felt like she was afraid of saying yes it sucked because she would feel guilt or shame because it would imply she regrets the kids. I mentioned this in the session and the therapist encouraged her to look at this outside of the lens of being a mother and to try to view it a bit more selfishly and individually, and it was very eye-opening. My wife mentioned that she was very frustrated with the fact that we did miss out on many things in life. She also was very clear in saying, I do not think I missed out on other partners or dating or partying, but I certainly lost all my friends. This was huge because one of the big pieces that has caused a strain in our lives is how siloed and isolated we've been, again busy raising kids. I followed up by reminding her that it's important to have good friends and to make time for herself and her friendships. For the past 3+ years, we've had multiple conversations about friends and how it is important to have them in life. Especially when you have similar peers that can help in many areas of life that perhaps we have no experience navigating, and even simply for enjoyment. It has always been something my wife avoids, even though she's always been someone who needs that external stimuli. The main reason for her not investing in friends or even herself has always been the kids. Like I mentioned earlier in this post, 90% of the answers have to relate to the kids to some degree. At this point in our session I started to feel like there was a common denominator, the kids, in most of the frustrations and problems she was experiencing. So I simply asked her, do you think you may be upset at me because I'm responsible for these kids in the sense that I got you pregnant so young? I wasn't ready, but she said that she was upset at me for that. She also followed up with the fact that she knows that's unreasonable because it takes 2 to tango. I did feel like it was progress because it kind of gave us something to work on and help alleviate some of these burdens, so we agreed to invest more time in nurturing good friendships both together and individually. Towards the end of the session, we began to discuss what actionable items we would take from this session. At this point, it was still all very ambiguous and blurry as to what the outcomes were. I was very direct, and very forward in asking my wife what her plan is moving forward. Note, I had decided prior to the session that should my wife say the same thing about being a co-parenting roommate that I would take the 180 approach and essentially do me. She started basically saying the same thing, that she doesn't have any desire to be intimate or sexual with me as of now and that she loves me immensely and she feels bad for not being there for me, as mentioned in my first post. I also brought up the brief swinging that happened, to which for the 50th time said it wasn't a problem. I agree with her on this. This was something that was a mechanical approach for a solution to a problem that was very much inexistent when we tried this. We, both, really have no issue to this. We know it happened, we tried it and mutually stopped and turned the page. I also brought up other life events that may cause resentment, and really we ended up not getting anywhere else as far as the root for resentment, which was discouraging. I then basically expressed to my wife that I will not be okay with that arrangement. I told her that I've really done everything I can and that this issue really has reached a point where it has nothing to do with me or require me to do anything that I'm currently not doing. I was very direct in saying that I will not be accepting this dynamic and that I need to be with someone who is actively involved in our marriage, works towards resolutions and is very much interested in maintaining an active intimacy and sexual relationship. I expressed how I am not going to be a convenience and that there was more to life than being roommates and co-parents. I made sure she knows I love her dearly and that I do want this to work for the better. I also told her that I'm fully committed to this marriage so long as she is as well, and that if she wasn't, it's okay. However, I will not be a part of something where these efforts are not reciprocated. I told her I have no plans of leaving, and I do not want a divorce. However, I made it clear that if this dynamic continues, that divorce will be the only outcome. Of course, tears were involved and it was a very bleak and sad ending to the session. Still nothing was said and I walked out very discouraged and very determined to start working on the 180 as soon as we left the room. It's painful and very difficult because much of the 180 requires you to be very short and cold and transactional. The saddest part is realizing, this dynamic already is very cold and transactional. Here is where it gets very interesting. I started working on implementing many of the 180 recommendations that same day. I mentioned to my wife that, hey, things are going to be a bit different moving forward. I'm going to honor her roommate/co-parent dynamic without reproach, and that it should be no mistake that I am not happy here and I am never going to be okay with it, but I am done working on it if she wasn't going to work on it. She agreed and went to bed. I started to build distance and started to basically focus on myself. Very short and transactional. She asked for help on some of her personal things, to which I declined, and it really shocked her. She was upset, saying I was being petulant. I explained to her that she is now fully in charge of her own life and her own issues. We didn't talk all day and we only spoke when necessary. Few days I keep this going and she's very visibly upset and stressed. I typically react to that with gestures of help or nurturing, but I didn't this time. That night she was crying, telling me she's stressed and she thinks something is wrong with me because I'm indifferent. I simply listened, then I told her that this is the dynamic she proposed and that I'm simply, much like her, taking care of myself and focusing on myself. I'm not going to lie, it has been very hard to be cold and distant because, as I mentioned before, I love her and I wish I could hold her and love on her. However, I know this is somewhat manipulative in a way, just to get her way and still keep me in the friend zone. So I've been staying the course. We're now going on a week of this 180 and let's just say, there has been many changes on her side. I think she is starting to realize there is more to me than just friends and co-parenting. I sent her a text a few days ago essentially itemizing bills and separating the financial responsibilities 50-50 and she lost her shit. She basically told me it was out of left field, to which I responded, "Hey, friends go in 50-50 and as your friend I expect nothing less." This was very eye-opening because it gave me a glimpse of I'm really taken for granted and how her level of comfort and convenience at my expense is really overlooked. I pushed through anyways and basically told her that this is the new dynamic she asked for and that it's still a bargain because she would have to be 100% if she was on her own. I'll wrap up with this. While the 180 has been working in many different areas, I am still very much sad about the overall situation. There have been many eye-opening statements being said and realization that have not been pleasant to encounter. It has also sparked new energy and new efforts on her side as well. She's definitely seeking to talk to me more often, and while it's hard to turn down, I hope if things improve, this continues to happen. I've also noticed that she's making more time for herself aside from being a mom, which is huge because she pretty much neglected herself for years. I'm very pleased seeing her be more herself. My hope is that as we work on ourselves, the marriage improves. There really is no telling at this point where this will go. We are very much cordial and amicable even to this day, and that's a very good sign. Boundaries are set and expectations are very clear, and I feel that no matter the outcome, I will be at peace with everything that has been done. We're still going to continue the couples therapist until we either rekindle our marriage or end up in divorce. I feel like having this non-biased third party really helps as a witness and as a guide through this. No matter what, I will always love my wife. However, I will not participate in a sexless, intimacy-less marriage because we both deserve better. I think this soft ultimatum, 180 method, has been very eye-opening. I'm definitely hoping for a rekindling of our marriage, but I'm also bracing for divorce. I agree on a timeline, and I've decided on a timeline for myself privately. I don't want to give her a timeline because I want to reduce the pressure. However, after 1 to 2 years if things don't improve, it won't be shocking or a surprise if we split. I think 1 to 2 years is more than reasonable. Now on to second story. Fiancée discovered my past relationship with a man through old pictures, and now she accuses me of purposely hiding it, causing a breach of trust. I, 29 male, lost my fiancé 4 years ago in a car accident. He and I were both 25 at the time and had been together since we were 19. If soulmates are real, he was mine. He was stubborn, he preferred a way earlier bedtime than I did, and was a major homebody, and I loved all of it. He would stay up with me until he was sure I fell asleep, and weekly movie theater outings, planned by him, became a thing like a month into us meeting. I am a fundamentally different person, both because I met him and because of my grief. I was shown what real love and effort and care feels like. I also don't talk about him. I go to therapy once a week. Otherwise, it's silence on that topic from me. He lives on in me in the ways I try to emulate him. I practice the patience he had that I always struggle to find. I go after career-related opportunities that scare me because I know he would encourage me to. Sometimes I let myself stay in bed because I know he'd be gentle with me and let me do that too. But I don't talk about him, and I probably never will. I'll make the occasional "oh, XWO, ULD love this" comment when I'm with friends who knew him well. With strangers, nothing. My friends and family respect that, as well. I'm engaged again. My fiancée, 31F, obviously knows I was engaged before. I pretty much told her my last partner passed away and I don't talk about it. I don't use social media in really any capacity anymore, but she happened to stumble upon an old Instagram profile of mine recently and saw him heavily featured. This led to her accusing me of purposefully keeping this from her. I don't really see why his gender matters, and I told her so. She said I've broken her trust. Times like these are when I long for the life I was living before. But grief fucked up my brain, so I'm not sure if I'm being insensitive. Edit, she knew I am bisexual. The only thing she didn't know was that my fiancé was a man. Update 1. Yesterday, I had an emergency therapy session because I was spiraling and didn't feel prepared to tackle the upcoming conversation with my fiancé without one. It was hard but necessary, as I was finally honest about just how much I was compartmentalizing my grief. It laid the foundation for where I'd like to go moving forward. Now I have to put in the legwork. The few hours between my therapy appointment and my fiancé getting off work was evidence of just how avoidant I've become. It was a conversation we needed, but definitely not one I wanted. When we finally sat down to talk, I asked her to start us off by telling me exactly what was bothering her about the whole situation. She said because I had come out to her in a casual way, the way I come out to anyone, by mentioning it early on when it seems natural to bring up, she didn't realize how serious I was and this made her look at me differently. She apologized for that and suggested that if I told her more about him now, it might be an easier pill for her to swallow. I tried, but there was this knot in my stomach the entire time I tried to pick a place to start. And maybe this is me being cruel, not giving her the benefit of the doubt, but it just didn't feel right. She hadn't come and said, I was shocked because I realized how little I know about this time in your life. Would you be open to talking about it now? Instead it felt like, tell me what you saw in him so I can attempt to rationalize your orientation. I told her I needed some time, so she went to stay elsewhere for the weekend. A longtime good friend of mine came over this morning. I think the combination of anonymously talking more openly about my partner here as well as being more open with my therapist helped remind me of how joyous and cathartic it could be. I don't know the exact catalyst, but I do know I spilled my guts. We talked for hours about things I haven't told anyone in years. I expressed how nervous I was about possibly living alone again and I was told that I did never have to worry about that an SOS text message would be all it took for me to have company if I needed it. Same goes for all my friends and family. I'm so lucky I have an incredible support system. 5 minutes into that hours-long conversation, I already knew. The trust, security, and love I felt made room for this newfound openness. The absence of any one of those marks a relationship DOA, and is why I felt physically ill trying to share his memory with her. I truly wish her the best. I think going our separate ways will be good for both of us. We weren't getting what we needed from each other. She's supposed to be coming back tomorrow, so we'll have the talk then. I have lots of work to do but for tonight, I get to be reminded of what safety feels like. Edit, please see this comment where I elaborate on the conversation she and I had. There seems to be this misunderstanding where I blame her for everything because she didn't perfectly respond to the situation. Two things can be true, I wasn't open, I am largely accountable for the problems in this relationship and I never should have entered it if I wasn't ready. She also said ignorant things. I'm not angry about it and it's certainly not the sole reason we're breaking up. It's just another reason, on the pile of reasons why this isn't sustainable. Me still not feeling comfortable enough to share with her equals me blaming her for everything, or even the majority. It was just the final nail in the coffin between maybe we can make this work with a lot of effort and this needs to end now.